So with that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Margarita with the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and she is going to be presenting on the economics of soil biodegradable mulch use.
Okay, good morning or good afternoon for some people. My name is Margarita Velandia. I'm a professor here in the Department of Agricultural and Research Economics at the University of Tennessee. Today, I'm going to be talking about the economic feasibility of adopting biodegradable mulches. Specifically, I'm going to go through some examples for strawberry production. From now on, and for simplicity, I will refer to biodegradable mulch as BDM and to polyethylene mulch as PE mulch. Okay, so regardless of the potential environmental benefits offered by BDMs, farmers need to understand the short-run economic implications of adopting BDMs for the farm enterprises. The first question all farmers ask me when discussing BDMs is, will BDMs cost more than PE mulch? And the answer to that question is yes. In general, BDM costs more than PE mulch. In this table, in the table I'm presented on this slide, I summarized cost information for a 4 by 4,000 foot roll of plastic BDM with a thickness of 0.6 mil and a 4 by 4,000 foot roll of PE mulch with a thickness of 1 mil for comparison. These costs were estimated using information from various input suppliers' websites as of February 24, 2022. So that's last week. As you can see in this table, the price of BDM can be about 60% higher than the price of PE mulch. But that BDM purchase price that I'm showing you in this slide does not include shipping costs. So as stated in the previous slide, BDM is generally more expensive, and therefore a producer needs to know potential savings associated with BDM in order to assess if those savings could offset the cost of the product. So it's important for a farmer to estimate disposal and removal costs. The labor associated with PE mulch removal will help determine potential savings associated with the adoption of BDM. A farmer needs to estimate the amount of plastic to be removed, which is determined by the distance between bed centers. Also, when estimating labor hours for removal and disposal of PE mulch, a farmer needs to estimate both operator and manual labor hours. Finally, estimating the cost of labor requires the farmer to estimate, of course, the hourly paid rate. The farmer should also know the cost of disposing that PE mulch after removing it from the field. Transportation, labor costs, and landfill disposal fees need to be considered when estimating disposal costs for PE mulch. Disposal costs vary by location. For instance, in California, disposal fees in 2020 were anywhere between $34 and $84 per ton, depending on the county where the landfill is located. And this information was taken from the Environmental Research and Education Foundation. Some landfills might not even accept PE mulch for disposal. So that's another consideration. Finally, a farmer considering transitioning from PE mulch to BDM should know that not all end-of-season activities will be eliminated at the end of the season when adopting BDM. Removal of drip tape is required before tilling BDM into the soil. Also, tilling BDM into the soil will involve some operator labor. Now, I'm going to go through some hypothetical scenarios to help you better understand not only the economic feasibility of adopting BDM in strawberry production, but the factors that will influence potential changes in net profits due to the adoption of BDM. We're going to focus on changes in income and expenses, and therefore net changes in profits resulting from the adoption of BDM. So the income side of profits could be affected if there are changes in what? Yield and price due to the adoption of BDM. Although our previous studies suggest consumers might be willing to pay a price premium for strawberries grown on BDM, in the following examples, we're going to assume no changes in prices due to the use of BDM, as currently there is no price premium associated with strawberries grown on BDM. We assume no changes in yield or price due to the use of BDM. In contrast, the adoption of BDM affects the cost side of profits, as in general, BDM is more expensive than PE mulch. Additionally, when adopting BDM, there are potential savings related to the elimination of end-of-season activities, such as PE mulch removal and disposal. The assumptions made to estimate changes in net profits when transitioning from PE mulch to BDM are presented on the top of this slide. We're going to be evaluating the factors affecting the economic feasibility of adopting plastic BDM on 1 acre of strawberries, grown using a 6-foot space between bed centers. We assume we're going to cover those that acre with 2 rolls, 2 4,000 foot rolls of mulch. And we're going to assume the cost of a 4 by 4,000 foot roll of PE mulch with a thickness of 1 mil is going to be $146. This is based on information we collected from various input suppliers as of February of 2022. We're going to assume the cost of a 4 by 4,000 foot roll of plastic BDM with a thickness of 0.6 mil is about $250. And this is, again, based on information from various input suppliers. We assumed labor cost is going to be around $17, and this is based on the California 2022 estimated adverse effect wage rate. We assume a disposal cost of $72 per ton, and this is based on average tipping fees for the US Pacific region, according to the Environmental Research and Education Center. We assume that the hours associated with removal and disposal of PE mulch are going to be 17 hours per acre, and this is based on the information we gathered from a survey of fruit and vegetable farmers in the southeastern region, as we do not have data related to labor hours associated with disposal in the US Pacific region. And we assume that the removal of drip tape before tilling BDM into the soil takes about 1.5 hours per acre. This is based on a single observation from a farmer here in Tennessee, as we do not currently have that information for drip tape removal in the US Pacific region. Based on these assumptions, we estimated net changes in profits when transitioning from PE mulch to plastic BDM in strawberry production using a 6-foot space between bed centers. As you can see in this table, for this specific example, additional costs are lower than reduced costs, and therefore in this scenario, transitioning from PE mulch to plastic BDM will have a positive impact on net profits of about $78 per acre. In the next few slides, I want to show you how potential changes in profits when transitioning from PE mulch to BDM vary when the price of BDM and labor hours associated with the removal and disposal of PE mulch change. In this first figure, you have on the horizontal axis cost of BDM, and on the vertical axis, you have changes in profits. As you can see in this graph, as the price of a BDM roll increases, the likelihood of experiencing a negative impact on profits when transitioning from PE mulch to BDM also increases. For example, at a $310 per roll price, the profits per acre when using BDM are going to be about $42 lower than the profits when using PE mulch. This result is very important as shipping costs will affect the base BDM price and could have a significant impact on the price of BDM if local input suppliers do not carry this type of mulch. Also, although I'm showing the results for a 0.6 mil thickness BDM mulch, the thickness of the BDM will significantly increase the cost. So that's something to take into consideration. Now, I want to evaluate potential changes in profits when transitioning from PE mulch to BDM for various scenarios associated with the number of labor hours per acre for removal and disposal of PE mulch. Depending on removal and disposal practices, the labor hours associated with the removal and disposal of PE mulch could vary from farm to farm. In this graph, you can see that as the number of labor hours associated with the removal and disposal activities increases, the likelihood of experiencing a positive impact on net profits when transitioning from PE mulch to BDM also increases. For example, if the labor hours per acre associated with removal and disposal of PE mulch are around 23, the profit associated with using BDM are about $143 higher than the profits associated with the use of PE mulch. In this slide, I summarize important considerations for the adoption of BDM in strawberry production. The cost of labor and BDMs are critical in assessing whether the adoption of BDM is economically feasible for a farm. It is important to evaluate potential changes in labor costs and how these changes may affect potential changes in profits when transitioning from PE mulch to BDM. From farms using migrant workers, although labor savings are important, it is also important to know the implications of reducing end-of-season activities or letting their workers leave the farm early. If their labor hours are reduced, workers may decide to go to another farm that will employ them for more hours per season. Therefore, it is essential for the farmer to be aware of the unintended consequences of reducing workers' hours at the end of the season. In small operations, the farm owner is often responsible for performing cleanup activities at the end of the season. Generally, owner labor for such activities is not a direct cash expense and can be overlooked when estimating total labor cost. Calculating the value of this unpaid labor will not only help assess the monetary value of the end of season activities, but will also help plan for future scenarios where owners may not be physically able to do this job. So what are the resources available for agricultural producers and other stakeholders to estimate and compare the cost of using alternative mulches? Our research team, led by the Washington State University team, developed an interactive mulch calculator that assists farmers in determining the quantity of mulch needed and provides cost comparison for BDM to PE mulch. This tool is available for free, and a link to the document describing the mulch calculator is available on this slide. The two components are the requirement calculator and the mulch calculator. So in this slide, you can see an example of a requirement calculator. For example, when assuming a 6-foot space between bed centers, the calculator will automatically calculate the number of rolls needed per acre for various mulch sizes. In this slide, you can see an example of the output you will obtain from the mulch calculator, a side-by-side comparison of the cost that will be different when using PE mulch and BDM. Several assumptions are made in using the mulch calculator, but most of these assumptions can be modified. This last slide presents several resources that are publicly available for your information, including the mulch calculator, 3 publications about the economic feasibility of BDM, dimensions, cost, and other important considerations for using BDM, and a couple of other useful websites. And with that, I will end my presentation and I'll entertain any questions if there are any.
Margarita, you had one question. It is on what grades formulations are based the biodegradable mulch for this economic analysis? So I think they're wondering what are the types of biodegradable plastic mulches that you use for these economic analysis, maybe Matter B or EcoVio-based feedstock materials.
So basically, the one that is easily available on the website is the Bio 360. That's commercially available and it's available in multiple input suppliers' websites. So that's where that information comes from. As I mentioned, it's a 0.6 mil. It's difficult to find BDMs with higher thickness that are commercially available.
Thank you. And there was another question or comment that was placed in the chat. It was about strawberry systems. And if you're looking at strawberry systems and lettuce, that take into consideration that in those systems that having biodegradable mulch fragments is of high concern because they're mechanically harvested and there's concerns about fragments being contaminant. So there really wasn't a question there, but it was just that really important point and observation that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. And that is also something that the team in California are studying to see what level of acceptance is there for fragments in the field, quantifying the fragments in the field, when you have those really short rotation times, as well as looking at if there are any materials that might enhance degradation of those remaining fragments when we have these short rotation times. Okay, so with that, that was a great presentation. We've heard from a great lineup of researchers that have been focusing on biodegradable mulches all the way from, defining what it is, impacts on the soil degradation, deterioration, and economics